We all know that the Logitech series has been a hero in sim racing since its release back in the early 2000s. It essentially created a generation of sim racers, and as time comes by, it continues to be one of the most popular systems to race on. There's this whole modification ecosystem in the industry behind the Logitech G series that essentially continues to make it very popular. And I've shown over the years a few of those modifications, and today I'm going to show you something really special, which will be the Max Pappas Innovation Sim Link to the Logitech G923. The necessary disclosure, MPI has sent the Sim Link for review, and I've worked in the past with Max Pappas in Racing Prodigy. But as always, all opinions are my own. The MPI Sim Link is a little bit different than everything out there in the Logitech ecosystem to change wheels, and MPI is also a little bit of a different company as they come from real racing and they want to bring the same technologies into racing. We've seen in the past, for example, where they brought some of the wheels for the Logitech G Pro ecosystem hub, which were actually quite interesting, and now they wanted to bring something like this as well into your Logitech G923. In terms of prices, we're talking about if you want to buy a SimLink system with one wheel, it will be $149. But if you want to add, for example, another wheel just like this one or this one, you can buy each one separately, then each wheel will be $99. So that means you don't need to buy the SimLink anymore. You just buy one wheel and that's basically it. In terms of build quality, they are built very much in the same way as the real life counterparts of these wheels. They're built with the same type of metal, built in Italy, the same type of suede, or in this case, for example, with the 330, it's built with the same type of foam. That is a proprietary system that they have on MPI, and this makes it, for example, this wheel incredibly light. It's one of the lightest wheels out there. This weighs about 250 grams, which is much lighter than pretty much everything out there. But to install the SimLink, you do require some time set on your side to dismantle basically every single part of the wheel. It is not difficult. They do have a setup process on how to do it and making sure that you put everything together. It should take you about 30 minutes or 45 minutes if you are not too prone of doing these types of changes. Little bit of a pro tip here. With the small screws, make sure that you know where they are, put them together with each specific button, so when the time is to reassemble, you know where each part is going. These screws are incredibly small and easy to lose. When you put everything together, you'll have at the center the Sim Link, and then you can start installing your wheels. The big advantage of the Sim Link is basically if you want to change the wheels, it's just essentially unscrewing 3 screws and putting back together the system, and it will be there. But if you want to keep doing it like this, I much recommend you to use just the 330 wheel shifters. Even though they're shallower, you won't need to change them when you go back from the circular into the 330, because the other shifter that comes for the deep dish wheel is a bit too long and won't be fitting with the 330. Each specific wheel will have a use case. For example, this 330 is built with sports cars in mind. I believe you can use this for Formula, even though it's a little bit too big for that. And the deep dish wheel is built with ovals in mind if you want to do some NASCAR in iRacing or something like that. Or at whim, you can also use this for drifting. The Logitech G923 and 93, for example, are still incredibly popular with drifters, and it's really not uncommon to see something like this or similar deep dish wheels that come from real cars to be installed at hubs for the Logitech G923s. This, for example, will be a 350mm wheel, so it is perfect for those two things. This one specifically, the 330, even though it is larger, it is also lighter than the original wheel from the Logitech G923. So when you do the changes, you won't be feeling much of a difference in terms of force feedback. In terms of ergonomics, it is okay, though it's a little more separated than the original wheel. The original wheel will have better ergonomics than this one, but it's really not something that I would say it is too different or something that takes away from the usability and immersion of using this. In terms of rigidity though, this wheel does bend a little bit. If you put some force into it, it will be exactly the same with the other wheel that was on the Logitech hub. But if you want something lighter, most times it will mean it will be feeling less rigid. It's not something that you actually notice when you're driving. While for this one, there are some advantages and one big disadvantage. When you use something like this in an oval, it is obvious, even if you use some sort of other hub for another type of wheel or wheelbase, when you use something of this size, the hub is really secondary. It's something that you only access when you really need to, and won't be any different with the Logitech G923. This thing is actually really rigid, as opposite to the 331, and it comes with added extra weight and size. And this will have an impact in force feedback. The force feedback will be feeling naturally muted if you try to drift it or you're just trying to go through ovals. If you try to drift it, it's probably becoming an issue, but then again, it will be becoming an issue for those of you who still drift with these types of wheels on your Logitech. So in that case, it won't be making much difference, but you know, there is a force feedback impact. For oval users, in my opinion, for the little bit I've put in ovals, I didn't feel any issues whatsoever to use this in ovals, because even though the force feedback is definitely more muted, there's still more enough than that. But if you still want more fidelity with a wheel and you move to this, you're going to feel a little bit of impact. You probably are not going to like it. The biggest advantage of this kind of system is essentially coming in with something that is usable and moddable without changing every single time a wheel in the hub in the center part of the steering rack of the Logitech G923 whenever you want to change wheels, or changing to a completely different quick release system that essentially becomes really expensive, and then you need to adapt each specific wheel. The Logitech G series isn't really an expensive wheelbase per se, so spending a lot of money in systems that require quick releases and then it drives up the price of everything isn't really often the best way, and oftentimes you are actually going to use the controls. The advantage of something like this is that you have the sim link at the center, you buy the wheel that you want, and if you want the other one or the future ones that will be coming out of this, well, there won't be any issues or extra changes you'll need to do, just 3 screws and that's it. While the price with the sim link is quite steep, adding an extra wheel is not going to be breaking the bank, all things considered, and comparing to all the things that I've seen for the Logitech G series, that sometimes becomes quite interesting. While the system is really interesting, it's really not without its criticisms, of course. First of all, the price is going to be, still a little bit too high. It's within the same line of whatever everybody is doing with the Logitech system and modifying and all of that. So, that is okay, but it's still something to note. The other part will be the selection of wheels. At the moment, there's only 2. There's a big one that is quite heavy, and there's this 330. I would love to see a 300 version of this, which I'll think will be the correct size for the Logitech G923. And if it was keeping in the same weight, I believe it will be even more sturdy than this, and also will improve the force feedback of Logitech G923. Even though there are plenty of direct drive systems that aren't really that expensive right now, there are still an army of followers of Logitech systems for one reason or the other. And if you want to give a new lease of life to your Logitech system that opens up with the possibility of using with different wheels all the time, well, you can look at MPI.